Airlines are expecting to carry a record 4.7 billion passengers next year. That's more than the pre-pandemic level of 4.5 billion recorded in 2019. Airline industry net profits are expected to reach $25.7 billion next year, but the group also raised its 2023 profit outlook to just over $23 billion, which is more than double the $9.8 billion it forecast in June. IATA Director General Willie Walsh said the speed of the sector's recovery was extraordinary, but warned that an average net profit margin of 2.7% is far below what investors in almost any other industry would accept, and too little for future investment. Juliet Mann has been talking to Willie Walsh.
Well, I think it's a positive reflection on the state of the industry at the moment. We've upgraded our profit forecast for 2023 and continued growth and profitability in 2024. So when you consider where the industry has come from, I think it's a fantastic achievement to be back in profit and to be upgrading the profit forecast.
More people are flying, more cargo is being transported by air, but taking on board green considerations, where do you see the direction of travel?
Yeah, this is very important. Sustainability is the #1 agenda item, I think, pretty much every airline around the world now, given the focus on the environment. We have a clear pathway as an industry to net zero in 2050. It's going to be very challenging and it is going to be expensive. And certainly in the short to medium term, we will rely heavily on the production of sustainable aviation fuels. And later on, as we get towards 2050, I think new technology developments may well play a part. But there is going to be a lot of challenges for the industry. We're a hard to abate industry, but we're absolutely determined to hit that net zero in 2050.
You mentioned sustainable fuel, and of course there was that maiden voyage, the first transatlantic flight recently that was fueled entirely by sustainable fuel. Considering that jet fuel prices have been really volatile, is sustainable the future of air travel? Is it hydrogen? Talk me through it.
Yeah, so in the certainly short to medium term, I would call that out to about 2040, we will be heavily dependent on sustainable aviation fuel. We estimate today that it's about 2.8 times the price of traditional jet kerosene, so it is a significant premium. Now, as more fuel is produced, and there are multiple pathways to produce this sustainable fuel, we believe the price certainly the spread will narrow. But despite the high cost of sustainable fuel, every single drop that was produced in 2022 and indeed in 2023 has been purchased and used by the industry. So I think you've got a clear determination by the industry to achieve long-term sustainability. But
as you say, the cost is a huge consideration. Let's talk about how expensive flying is getting and the impact that inflation is having. I mean, airfares have been surging, haven't they? So what's your outlook there?
In general, airfares are matching, if not slightly below, the levels of inflation. I think everybody's aware of how high inflation has been relative to what we've become used to for some considerable time. So yes, airfares have risen, but in the main, they've risen in line with inflation, or indeed in some cases slightly below the levels of inflation. Now, going forward, given that fuel is the single biggest element of an airline's cost base, and this year and next year it'll represent about 31% of cost for the industry on average. That clearly will increase as we transition to more sustainable fuel. So I think that's going to put a bit of a challenge in the way of airlines to continue to grow at the pace we have seen. So we do see growth levels for the industry moderating a little bit. We believe that people will still fly, but it is going to become more expensive because anything that increases the cost of fuel for the airline ultimately will have to be passed through to consumers in the form of higher ticket prices.